What's going on, guys? My name's Daniel, and today I'm going to be talking about how I made these card holders for my brand Apologetic Letters. I'm going to be talking about everything from designing through manufacturing, as well as all the lessons I learned along the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, first let's talk about designing. So here I have pulled up the original file for the card holder that I designed. Obviously super rough draft, as is most things that I create. And so really with this one, I wanted to design a card holder and I wanted to make it unique, but also not too out of the box. And so here's essentially what I came up with. So let me just start a new folder here real quick. So here's kind of how I went designing it if I were to do it from scratch again. And so really the point that I want to make is that it's really not that difficult to start a new idea. If you have something, just make a very rough draft of it and kind of just go from there and kind of see, what really hits, what doesn't. And you can kind of, decide later on if it's something you actually want to pursue making. So for this, obviously I kind of knew what a very generic card holder looks like. You have the two slots. It's kind of got this like rectangular shape with a slight, bend at the edge. And then I just did a very simple logo on the bottom. So literally I just used this logo, did an all over print, and that was kind of the whole first rough draft. And then obviously I created a pattern and had this like repeated so it looked like, something like this, more or less. You get what I'm saying. So I ended up here, and then for the back, that's why I came up with this idea of having the quote on the back. I thought of a lot of different ideas for the card holder. I've seen some very unique ones. I'm sure you've probably seen like on Instagram or either places on YouTube or really just anywhere on the internet. There's some really cool ideas out there, but I wanted to keep it very simple so that the manufacturer can make it, obviously for like a reasonable quantity and price. But also it's too that I wanted to make it unique, but again at the same time nothing too crazy that fit most well with my design style essentially. So that's how I landed on this quote, "What will you accomplish today?" on the back. I thought this was just a cool little like subtle reminder, because something like a card holder you use every day, you're always using your wallet, whatnot. And I wanted it to be something that you could like look at each day and be like a subtle reminder, a subtle like, you're going about your day, you're going about your business, stay focused on what you're going to accomplish today. Just a very subtle reminder that I thought was not too deep, but also still like meant something. And so there was kind of like a fine line when I was designing this of something not being too corny, but also like applicable and practical enough that would actually like every once in a while maybe have some sort of microscopic effect on your day. Again, designing this, if you've never used Illustrator, it's not that difficult, I don't think. I'm completely self-taught off YouTube, and even then I'm very novice. And the other part that I really want to talk about, like I said before, is that anytime you have a new idea, always just like flesh it out and see like kind of what becomes of it, because you never know what's going to happen. As you can see that this is Illustrator file number 194, and I made this I think 2 years ago, or like a year and a half ago. And I think I'm into an Illustrator alone like in the 400s, and I've only made like 15 products actually released to date. So once I kind of had this rough draft and design, then it goes on to actually trying to get it sampled. So if you've never sampled before, I personally use Alibaba. I know a lot of people do. I'm sure you've heard of people on TikTok or IG using Alibaba, but that's really where the magic happens. I was able to pull up my initial conversation with the manufacturer. So literally just that previous thing that I had made before, screenshotted something as simple as, "Hello, I'm trying to make this card holder. Here's basically what it is, what I'm trying to do with it," and then I kind of go from there to see if it's something that they're able to do. And then obviously you're going to get questions like what kind of leather you want, quantity. They always want to know either A, how many samples you're going to make, and also B, when you actually commit to a bulk order, approximately how many you're going to make, otherwise known as an MOQ oftentimes, or no, they're going to ask you how many that you want to make, but oftentimes they're going to have an MOQ, minimum order quantity. So it's important to know that if those goals align before even really going into the sample making process, otherwise it's just not going to work out. And then other things like price, target, and budget, and then how you want to do your box. So before I'd done this, I had only done t-shirts, hoodies, hats. I think I did a jacket before this. So this was my first actual like leather good. And so a lot of this was very new to me in terms of things like the boxes or dust bags. And then you really just go from the conversation from there. One note that I want to make about using Alibaba and looking into a new manufacturer is always ask for past work that they've done. So as you can see here, I wanted to make sure that they're able to do this embossing effect, as well as I just wanted to see what their overall quality of their card holders was like. So then they sent like pictures like this. Sometimes they'll send like videos and whatnot. And so I really wanted to make sure that they can do the embossing. And so they're able to show me this little thing that kind of looked like what I wanted to do. And then this one also helps sell me on it. Obviously, this was a much bigger embossing and not like the one that I did. And so then the sample process from there is really as simple as making sure you get all the details done. Obviously, this is my very first rough draft. After that, I want to do things like, you know, I want to make sure I get the sizing right, which luckily with something like this, there's a pretty like industry standard of like how tall and wide the card holders are. So I was able to like use some of that information. So I would literally just like change this and put like, I don't know, 4 inches on the card holder height, and then something like that, so that they're able to, you know those things, and you don't have to make further samples. Making those modifications later on just cost you more money at the end of the day. So it just looks something like this. I think that ended up being something similar to the card holder. I don't know. Something like that. Probably not. Maybe. And so, yeah, it's really just a lot of going back and forth, finalizing all the details. Like I said, the only things that they needed from me were the height and width. I just send over the fonts. I think I used Illustrator, or sometimes I'll send as a PNG of the logos or just what you're getting printed. It really just depends on what they want or what they prefer. So like this apologetic letters, the silver embossing that's seen on the front, I used, no, that's not the right font. I think I used Baskerville. Yeah, I use this font, Baskerville Old Face. It's one of my favorite fonts. I use it for a lot of things. So I decided on that font, and then this, what will you accomplish today? I think I changed the font on this one from what it shows here on Illustrator. I can't remember what exactly I used. Anyways, these are all things that you're going to want to finalize. You're going to want to look at also the sizing of these. So when I'm like looking at how big I want to make the actual emboss or the silver lighting embossing on the card holders, oftentimes I'll just use like a tape measure and kind of measure out approximately how high and wide it should be, and then you can make those adjustments appropriately. Yeah, I think this was the font. It was something like this. So over that, I don't know. You get the point. You get the point. And so one other aspect that I wanted to make sure I touched on is there's going to be a lot of like confirming questions with your manufacturer, what kind of font I used, the lettering, the spacing, the sizing. Choosing swatches is very common. Sometimes, especially when you're making clothes of like it's like a knit or a hoodie or something like that, when you get your sample in, they'll also send you a swatch book along with it, just to kind of let you see in person as opposed to just on the computer. And then you can make changes from there for future samples, which is pretty helpful. So as you can see here, I finally got the first sample in, and then yeah, we will review these. Okay, so here we have all 3 card holders. I couldn't record with 2 phones, so this can be how we're doing it. And you can see there's the blue one. The blue one was the most recent one that I actually released, and then the green one is the future one released, and the red one here shown is the original one that I made. Here is the actual card holder that was released, not the original sample. You can see the embossing has been worn over time. You can see the stitching, the white contrast stitching. Overall, the card holders are pretty well made and pretty well constructed. I was overall pretty satisfied with the manufacturer that I went with. Took a handful of tries, and some of them still had stitching issues. Like even this one that I ended up using had some minor stitching issues that I wasn't the happiest with, but you kind of have to, go with what you got. Yeah, here's the first sample that I made. The biggest issue with this one was that the lettering was way too small for what I wanted on both the front and the back, so that was like the biggest adjustment to make. Obviously, the embossing looks the same as the original, as the finalized card holder, but again, the lettering was probably the biggest part, and also it ended up being like super super thin. So I definitely changed the thickness on the from the original sample to what was actually released. So here's the second sample that was actually used. I ended up not getting this one with any lettering on the back, which is why you didn't see anything there. I used this one for a while, which is where I can see the embossing so worn down because I used this one for so long. It actually, the most recent, the actual card holder that released, as you can see here, the embossing's held up much better, and overall the quality was much better to what I wanted. The lettering, the sizing was what I wanted, and the thickness was improved. And the stitching quality in general was much better than before, although if I were to say one thing that the manufacturer slash these card holders have had an issue with, it's small defects in the stitching. Is not been it's not been the best. It's not. So there's my initial sample, the second sample, and the final product. Not pictured is there's one other sample that I did, which was really just the same thing but a little darker and heavier embossed. It ended up being sold in a sample sale last July, so I don't have that. So now you can see the newest card holder that I released, the Sapphire logo card holder. And the main difference was between the color and the quote on the back. It says talk less, listen more. I liked this quote. I've been trying to experiment with a lot of quotes. I'm always like putting new ones down in my note page, my book. As I really like this series with the card holders of doing the quotes on the back. I think it's just a unique idea. It's kind of like something that I've owned now that I not own, but something that I want to keep consistent with my brand, and people have really seemed to like it. They've sold well. Obviously, the red ones sold out back in the fall. The blue ones have sold somewhat well since I've released them. I've dropped 100. As of the time of this video, I've sold, I believe, 60 to 65 of them, so I've got like 30 to 40 left, full transparency. The quality on these, I think, was actually better than the red ones. I like the embossing on these ones a little bit more, and you can see that holds all my cards very well. There's a debit license, credit card on the back, and then I have my insurance card and like a gift card on the other back. And so side by side, you can see the two different colors. Obviously, it's really nothing drastic. It's the same thing, different color, different quote on the back. Still to this day, these are the only like leather goods that I've done, and really like I want to start branching more onto accessories. Like I said, I've done t-shirts, I've done hoodies, I've done jackets. I'm doing a dress shirt, a streetwear dress shirt soon, and I have done hats. I also have puffers on the way. I have jeans on the way. I have more hats. But I think this is a cool product that I really like to expand upon. I like this series. As you can see here, I have the newest sample, this green one with the nice embossing, white contrast stitching as normal. Obviously, we have the cash slot in the middle. And so the new quote that I came up with, or not, I didn't come up with it, but I heard it was actually a closed mouth never gets fed. You've probably heard this one before, but I actually heard this one recently from another streetwear person in the industry that's higher up. I just thought this was really like applicable to obviously like this industry and like business, but also just life in general. Really just like asking for what you want and going out and getting it. And so after you make all of your samples and you're on your final sample and you're ready to make your bulk order, then it's really time to decide how many you want to make, and then you have to go into things like the box packaging. Do you want to ship by sea using freight, which is generally cheaper, or do you want to send by air, which is generally a lot more expensive? Luckily, these card holders are very small, lightweight, and are pretty easy to ship compared to 100 hoodies, for example. These 100 card holders were much simpler. So as you can see here, I ended up going with this very simple white box with the apologetic letter, silver lettering, kind of just mimicking. It was the exact font as the card holder itself. I wanted to do something a little bit more extravagant than that, but I was in a bit of a time crunch and really wanted to get these released. And the manufacturers, the other ones that I looked at specifically for the packaging, just weren't able to get something done in a shorter amount of time. And I felt it was going to be too much of a hassle with trying to get new boxes made, potentially multiple versions of those, as I probably wasn't going to be satisfied with the very first one. But you can see here I was able to get that done. And then you can see the 10s to basically 100 card holders that they ended up making. And then it got sent to me, and that's what you see here today. And so that's really all I've got for today's video. I hope you learned something today. If you didn't, please let me know what I can do better. Like I said, this is the first video I've ever made. I'm trying to help you guys out, other small clothing brand owners or even just small business owners. If you want to talk about literally anything from designing, manufacturing, business stuff in general, I would love to chat. But yeah, like I said, my clothing brand is Apologetic Letters. I'll probably put like a link in bio or something like that if you want to check it out. I still have some of the blue card holders left over if you want one of those. They're only $32 with free shipping if you're based in the US. But yeah, I hope you learned something today. And if you have any questions, please drop them down below. I'd love to answer anything else. And if you have any questions that you want me to dive further into, like in a further video, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you guys.